Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Mary Grace Show. I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. And we are here today to talk about probably all of those things with our friend Sam Faddis, also known as Sam the Spy. This is another episode of Spy Talk. Welcome, Sam. It's great to see you.
It is great to be here. Happy spring, by the way. Snow has finally
That's
melted
good.
around here.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we had our grass mowed the other day, and everything it looks like everything just got a nice haircut. And
Yeah,
yeah.
that'll be a while up here.
Oh
But
gosh, you're like in the hinterlands. We burned
yeah,
leaves. We usually do in the fall, but we were busy with other things, and so we got out there and did that the other day. That was nice. It was like the perfect crispy evening to do that, and it was good. So Sam, we as usual, we have a lot to talk about. We sometimes we have new listeners and they don't know who you are exactly. Can you give us a brief intro and background on why we have you on, who you are, and like why it matters? Because we didn't just find you randomly to come on the Mary Grace Show.
well, I don't know that I can answer the question of why
We
you have
love
me on. That
having you on
always
the show,
mystifies
but
me. But look, I was U.S. Army officer for a while. I was there, so there's the skeleton in my closet. I'm a lawyer, and I worked for the state of Washington as an assistant attorney general for a while. And then I became what they call an operations officer with CIA, which normal people would call a spy or a spook. And I did that for 20 years undercover in the Middle East and South Asia. And then I worked with other chunks of the intelligence community, pretty much all of the rest of the pieces of the intelligence community for another decade. And mostly I built their training classes and trained their operators to go downrange for another decade. And these days, I am involved in politics and national security policy, and I've written 6 books, I think, and taught at a bunch of institutions, and I hang out and talk to Mary Grace. That's what I do. That's what.
and you're a regular on the War Room.
And I'm a regular on the War Room and a number of other programs.
Yeah, yeah.
Any place where I feel like we're in the business of telling truth. I don't waste a lot of time with other networks where they want to engage in silliness. I've kind of gradually weaned myself away from all of them. When they call, I'm like, no, I'm not playing the game of parroting lines for you guys. That's not happening.
Yeah, yeah, good. And the other thing too is I'm going to say this because you're not really going to say it, is a lot of what's been going on in the last couple of years leading up to the transition to this administration. You've been pretty instrumental in helping advise and get the ball rolling. And I'm going to brag on you just a little bit because the things that we're seeing happen at the speed of light with the Trump administration, a lot of these things, Sam has been working quietly in the background to help put these things in place. And so it's because of Sam and people like him that President Trump and his team have been able to go out of the gate at breakneck speed and to have things in place. So thank you for your dedication to that, Sam.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think it's an excellent point. Not so much because, I mean, I appreciate the praise for myself personally, but there's a lot of guys and gals who have been doing a lot of planning and a lot of foundational work. So I work very closely, part of the America First Policy Institute. They produced an entire book on how to fix American national security. I wrote the entire chapter on intelligence reform for that book. But if you can find that book online. By the way, I don't get any royalties from that, so that's not me hawking my book. But the point is, you'll see a whole bunch of folks who put a tremendous amount of time into making sure that this time when Donald Trump arrived in the White House, he was not on his own. He had a supporting team. He had a blueprint. He had the he was armed with what he needed to make the kind of change you're seeing.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. The plan for this and the
Right,
foundational work for
exactly.
this
And
part of the
his offensive line is actually helping him to advance the ball as opposed to tackling him and, behind the line of
yes.
scrimmage. So that's kind of
Yep.
a key thing.
Good football analogy. I like that. We guess
Thank
that
you.
that
Thank
was
you, because that's what was happening in 2016, right? I mean, he
100%.
was being
100%.
kneecapped by his own O-line. So, I think
Yes.
that's really
Yes.
important for people to understand, and one of the things that I think is so important as well is that, as you said, President Trump is moving very quickly, and it is
Mhm.
because, people like Sam, patriots who love this country, have been working tirelessly behind the scene for months, years, uh, to help. And one of the things that I've been pointing out to people as well is that uh, when we talk about holdovers from previous administrations, we always think of it as um, like Obama holdovers. We think of deep state holdovers, people that are there to sabotage the operations and to even to create what we would call constitutional crises. However, I think it's some people don't understand that, President Trump's team probably, most likely, also had holdovers, remaining from the 2016, administration
Mm.
who have been quietly working behind the scenes. These are patriots. These are people who are quietly going about doing their job, and in many ways,
Mm.
kind of under the radar because in order for them to stay in under the last regime, they would have to be largely unknown or unthought, like just
Mhm.
invisible, kind of invisible. And so I think we're seeing a lot of the stuff that Doge is uncovering, a lot of the data that they're working with. People should understand that
Mhm.
that data didn't just come out of thin air, that Elon and his team didn't just go in on January 21st and dig up a lot of data. We're talking about terabytes of data. We're talking about data
Mhm.
that would years ago would have filled an entire room, and in some cases still
Right.
does. That's
Mhm.
the result of patriots working quietly, invisibly behind the scenes, to get this mandate accomplished for we the people, and we're starting to
Mhm.
see that. And that brings me to, I think, the first thing that I would like to talk about is the uh, the attorney general, the FBI. People have, for good reason, for good reason lost faith in. They've lost faith in the system, especially the judiciary, the DOJ, the FBI,
Mhm.
and there are many people who want simply to see it abandoned and disbanded. However,
Mhm.
we have some really solid people, including Cash Patel, our friend Cash, and Pam
Mhm.
Bondi, and President Trump has put his faith in those people, and yet we have big conservative influencers calling them out and casting doubt, and in my opinion, in some cases, trying to poison the well against them. As a prosecutor, as an attorney, as somebody who has served in government in these exact roles
Mhm.
at the state level, um,
Mhm.
how are we to interpret what's going on? They've made arrests, they just haven't arrested people like Jim Comey, right?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I understand people's impatience, if that's the right way to summarize that. But look, we just went through an era. I don't know that we're out of that era, but we have just seen up close and personal the weaponization of the judicial system and law enforcement against domestic political opponents, up to and including the guy who is now the president of the United States. using the power of the law and the justice system for political purposes. Okay, the end result of that, if you leave that alone, is we don't have a republic anymore. We don't have a rule of law. It's not a bad day. It's not a less than optimal day. It's the end of the entire American system that we lived under, if that's where you go. And we were moving real fast down that road to becoming just a banana republic. Okay, so now we have good people back in office. And yeah, we need to hold folks accountable, and folks are going to have to go to jail. It's the line from National Treasure. Somebody's got to go to prison, Ben.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. But you have to also restore the integrity of the process. This can't become a lynch mob. This can't become, let's just go string that guy up, and who the hell cares about the legalities, the law, and all of that. Okay, you might get your revenge, but that'll be the final nail in the coffin of the republic, because now we're just to a system where whoever's in power does whatever the heck they want. So as much as you are committed to seeing justice done, and I believe will be done, is being done, you have to go back to doing it legally, procedurally correctly. If you don't, that's great. You strung up your enemies and kiss the republic goodbye, because now we just live in a system where whoever's in power can do whatever the heck we want. So that restoring the integrity and the principles of the process is critical. And man, having spent a lot of time traveling around the world to some places where the rule of law had long since disintegrated, you do not want to live in a world in which it's just dog eat dog, and whoever has the most guns at any one point in time does whatever the heck they want. So I get it. I'm as anxious as there are a lot of people on my list of folks that need to be wearing orange jumpsuits, but you have to do it by the numbers in the right way, or you're really destroying everything that we just fought for.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing to remember. And also, when you look at, for example, the FBI, we talked about this even before Trump took the oath back in January. We talked about the fact that there are people embedded in these institutions at pretty high leadership levels who are still actively, and in some cases openly, opposing the mandate of the people and of the current leadership. And that has to be rooted out. The other thing that has to be rooted out is the systemic corruption. And one thing that I think you could speak to, and me as well, is that culture comes from the top down. And when you have somebody like Cash got confirmed a month ago, and in order to change that culture fundamentally, you need time. You need time to reset the morale, to get in there and make contact with your boots on the ground, with your what do you call them, rank and file team members, because a lot of these people who are patriots, who love this country, have been operating largely underground because they've had their heads down, hoping they survive this, holding out with the hope that somebody like Kash Patel would get into leadership. Now, there are some people who think, well, these guys are no better than anybody else in the institution because they should have had the courage. They should have had the courage to come out and be whistleblowers and do the right thing. We could spend a whole show talking about the ethics and morals of that and that type of thing. But the fact is, people made different decisions for different reasons. Maybe they were accomplishing good things to a point that they, aside from what we saw with January 6th, maybe they felt like the mission that they were on was worthy for them to stay. I don't know the reasons why the rank and file,
Mhm.
many of them remained quiet. I don't know. But I imagine that most of them are happy to see this new leadership and are, cheering on the eradication of some of the leadership that has been working at odds with this administration. What do you think? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but I'll throw this in addition into the pot, if you will. All respect in the world for Kash Patel.
Yeah,
Okay, I've been on many programs with Cash. You know him well.
yeah,
Superb guy, great choice. Has all the skills, all the abilities. So nothing I'm going to say is a reflection on Cash. Okay, you told Cash he's in charge of the FBI. Well, the FBI last time I checked is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 men and women spread in field
yeah,
offices all over the continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii, and with legal attaches all over the planet. Now you got a guy, even a guy like Cash with all his ability, and you stuck him in an office in Washington, D.C. And all of a sudden, somebody thinks, I'm not suggesting you think, somebody thinks because you put that guy, I don't care who it was, the most capable person you could ever had found in world history in that position. You think he suddenly transformed that organization
right.
instantaneously overnight because he sat down behind a desk? I don't think he's sitting there with his feet up. I think he's probably working 18-hour days, 7
Mhm.
days a week. But that is a massive
Yeah,
process. Now, part of it is time, as you have suggested. Part of it is no human on earth that has ever existed can pull that off by themselves. In other words, below that, within that bureaucracy, at the field office level, at the all the intermediate levels, he needs a bunch more folks. Now, as you said, he's been in position what, maybe 30
yeah,
days. And he doesn't yet have that supporting team, which means that largely he is talking to all the same folks that were in position before he took office. Now, some of them are, as you said, patriots who are cheering and thinking, thank God you're here. You know what? Some of them are not. Some of them are on the other side
yeah,
of this thing and are 100% dedicated to defeating Donald Trump's agenda, preventing Cash from
mhm,
making that change. And look, we're using FBI and Cash as an example because we started on that focus, but the same would be true at
yeah,
CIA and every one of these other things. You got Director Ratcliffe sitting on the 7th floor up in the headquarters in Langley, Virginia, McLean. And he has now, I think, a deputy in place. Now, CIA is not nearly as big as FBI, but it's still a big worldwide organization. Now, underneath him are going to be a whole bunch of guys and gals who are going to be really psyched that he's there. There are also going to be people that are 100% committed to defeating his agenda in
right.
every way they can. And now all of a sudden, 30, 60 days into this, people are going to say, I don't get it. Why haven't they fixed everything yet?
Yeah,
Come on. I
yeah,
mean, he until they're not only, so it's not just time, it's the backup, it's the additional positions, it's all those critical positions. We're like, it's Omaha Beach, and we're about 3 feet from the water line coming up the beach on the sand. There's a long way to go here before you take on this giant
mhm,
bureaucracy and
mhm.
really
Yeah,
control it.
yeah, I think so, and I think I mean, I'm seeing in the comments, and comments like this, I think are very short-sighted, right? I'm gonna look at this comment, and someone is saying, "Doge has the receipts on USAID funding terrorists. Where are the arrests?" Okay, review what we just said, and understand that the people that are behind this, who have been getting away with this for years, many of whom are Republicans who have known about this,
Mhm.
uh, this is a zero-sum game. They are not letting go of any shred of control that they may have had, and we see that in the way that they are, judge shopping and putting these rogue judges on these cases uh, to pass injunctions to prevent Trump from actually doing the job. Now, as far as terrorists are concerned, I don't know what you are expecting. It, we have already seen multiple arrests of MS-13. We have seen arrests of Tren de Aragua. Those are terrorists that are operating on U.S. soil. Um, and my opinion on this is that I'm really happy about this because in terms of the immediate threat to the American citizens, I think that the American citizens have much more to fear from an MS-13 gang member walking the streets, or a Tren de Aragua member walking the streets and, you know, victimizing young women or children or any adults like Lake and Riley. That is a bigger immediate threat to the citizenry than Jim Comey. Even though on the bigger scale, those people have done clearly treasonous acts, I believe that the FBI and Pam Bondi, I believe that one of the reasons they're going so quickly after these people, these foot soldiers, is because of the threat. I mean, where it's people's lives are in danger. I mean, entire communities have been terrorized by these people that President Trump has classified as foreign terrorist groups on US soil. So I don't know why people are thinking that terrorists are not being arrested. They are being visibly arrested and deported as we speak. That is a massive priority of this administration. So please get some perspective on this, people. When you hear that Tren de Aragua members are being deported and sent to the Salvadoran prison, I don't know how much clearer it can be that there are terrorists who are being arrested and deported. What say you to that, Sam?
Oh, well, look, I agree with everything you just said, but I mean, I'm going to kind of return to the note I was hammering away at before.
Yeah.
I get people's impatience. I mean, in addition to what we were talking about in the
Yeah.
intro about doing all the policy, not all the policy work, being involved in the process of producing policy and planning for this
Mhm.
administration. I also spent, a huge amount of time in the state of Pennsylvania where I live politically organizing, turning out the vote, making sure that Kamala Harris's campaign died right here in Commonwealth when it got
Yeah.
to the Keystone State, which we
Yeah.
were very successful in doing.
And by the way, congratulations. Good job.
Well, look, that's not me saying I personally did that because
No,
that's
I
not the way
know.
they work. We did that in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I've been up to my eyeballs in this fight, not to mention when I walked out the door for a long time. When I walked out the door at CIA some time ago, not because I had to, because I chose to. It was actually because I recognized I couldn't fix the place from within and I needed to go out and get into the fight and do the right thing. So that's about 15 years I've been hammering away
Yeah.
at this issue. So I'm as impatient as anybody else. But I think people misunderstand the reality of the situation in DC. It's fantastic that Donald Trump is in the White House. I voted for him and sweat blood to get him there. If you didn't take the lesson from the first Trump administration that the fact that a guy sitting in the Oval Office does not equal you are now actually in control of the federal government, you must have been asleep, because
Right.
the entire federal government then went to work. I shouldn't say the entire federal government, not every worker, but very powerful interests then went to work to actually stage what amounts to the first attempted coup in American political history to destroy it. He's back. He has a team. He is infinitely better prepared and supported. I don't mean him personally. I'm not criticizing him. He has the team he needs. But that victory did not end anything. That was like the Battle of Trenton. The
Mhm.
revolution, what did Washington say to his generals after the Battle of Trenton when they wanted to take a break? He said, "What can you be thinking, that we won the war? That was a battle." So that
Right.
battle is underway in Washington DC. I mean, these agencies are actively resisting the president of the United States. Use CIA as an example, as I did a minute ago. Director Ratcliffe and one other guy are the new bodies at Central Intelligence Agency. That's it, people. That's the entire landing team that arrived at CIA is 2 guys,
Yeah.
right? He hasn't yet, we don't yet have a new director, what's called director of operations. So what does that mean? He's the guy who actually runs all of CIA ops worldwide. That's the guy who is the head operator, the most important day-to-day guy actually in the agency. The guy sitting in that chair right now is the same dude that was sitting there when Joe Biden was in the White House. Now, I know him personally, and I'm not denigrating him personally, but the point is, so right there, that's about 6 inches down into the bureaucracy, and you've already hit bedrock of nothing has been changed yet, and it won't. And that means you got to fill positions at that level throughout that whole bureaucracy. Kash Patel's sitting in FBI headquarters. Who's he giving orders to? With the exception of the head of the FBI field office in New York, every single person he's talking to is somebody who was in the FBI running the exact same shop when Joe Biden was in the White House. So the idea that all of a sudden we have control of this entire machine is really erroneous. I'm sorry. I wish to God it wasn't. This is actually the battle right now. And of course, we haven't gotten to talking about federal judges that are busy issuing clearly unconstitutional injunctions and all that crap.
Right.
So these guys are in a fight all day, every day. They didn't suddenly take control. It's all over and they can do whatever they want. Should it work like that? Yeah, probably, but it doesn't work like that.
So in other words, it's not an episode of a TV show.
It's not an episode of a TV show, right? We didn't skip all of that. It's like, you know what? Well, there's just a huge amount of work to be done. And look, as you're filling all these positions, this is the really critical stuff. Like I said, the director of operations for CIA, the guy who actually runs all the ops worldwide for CIA, okay, remains the dude who was there when Joe Biden was in the White House. Okay, now you want to replace him. And now just think about this across the board, thousands and thousands of such positions. While you're trying to find the right guy, let's add some layers of intrigue. The guys you're fighting are busy feeding you people to put into these positions who aren't actually playing for your team, right? What happened yesterday? 6 NSC staffers were fired because they had been identified. National Security Council folks working at the White House level identified as playing for the other team, playing for the folks who are hostile to Trump. So that's 6 folks right there within the Trump White House identified only yesterday as working actively against him.
That's so critical.
That is a drop in the bucket, people. That's not the end of anything. That is true in every one of these bureaucracies. So it's not just the holdovers. As you are being fed names and trying to figure out, Donald Trump doesn't have a Rolodex and he pulls up 4,000 people he knows personally to plug into all these key positions. So at some point he's relying upon input from advisors. And in that process, I know this sounds like something out of some medieval court or a bad spy movie, but it's real. As he's doing that, some of the recommendations that are being made for him are bad recommendations, and some of them are deliberately bad recommendations. Like, put this dude into this position, but the person making the recommendation is not actually playing on his side. So that's the swamp that they're trying to make all this stuff happen in, and it ain't easy. And by the way, I will guarantee you there will be missteps, as there were with these 6 NSC staffers. That's not a criticism of anybody. Perfection is unattainable. You will make bad selections. There will be some of these cabinet officials probably that won't last a year. he will identify and say, wrong move.
Mhm.
So it will be frustrating and bloody as you go forward.
That
I will shut up. I will shut up for a while now. Sorry, I went off on a
no,
rant.
that is true, really enlightening. So thank you, thank you. I mean, that's a mic drop. And one thing I think that I would add as well is there are people that Trump would want in certain positions who have opted out
Yep,
because for what different reasons. Maybe they understand that the cost to their family.
because I want to
They
have a
want to have a
life.
life.
Because they'd like to not
Yeah.
be chewing Pepto Bismol by the handful at 2 a.m. trying to get some
Right,
sleep.
right.
Yeah.
Their business, their family, whatever, they've made the decision that, they don't wanna be targeted. They don't want violent extremist leftists outside their house,
Yes.
threatening to burn their house down. I mean, this
Yep.
is the extreme that we're at. And when you see, for example, what is happening with the way that people have been mind controlled into going and firebombing car dealerships, privately owned businesses, because they are true believers. They've been radicalized. If you see that happening in the civilian population, just imagine the level of fervor that is going on inside of these organizations. The people that Sam is talking about, these are true believers. These are people who truly believe that their resistance is their quote patriotic duty. Alexander Vindman is a good example of somebody that is operating at a level of belief that they use to justify treasonous behavior. And this is happening, as you said, at a scale that is larger than the population of many small countries. That there
Yep.
is an army of individuals operating at that level that people just cannot even fathom. I want to. We got to take a break, and when we come
Okay.
back, we'll talk about what's happening with these judges at the judicial level. Uh, Another layer of treason. But as we go into the break, I want to remind people that the best way to stay in touch here with the Mary Grace Show is to go to my website, marygracemedia.com, and get on the mailing list. You will get an email before we do shows like this. And by the way, we do have a show later today at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you are interested at all in the MAHA movement and in making America healthy again, I have my show that I do with Dr. Sean Baker, also known as the Carnivore Doctor. That is Healing America and Beyond podcast series that we do about every 2 weeks in collaboration with him. That's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern this afternoon. I'm going to take Sam off camera here for just a second. And if I lose you, Sam, you know what to do. But we'll run our promos here and then we'll be back. One thing I wanted to talk to people about, as you know, there is a situation now with the economy that has probably some people a little bit worried. Fears of 2008 happening and slowly growing stronger. Historically, gold has followed a different path during economic downturns. That's why some are exploring gold IRAs as an option. If you look on your screen, you'll see a QR code. If you look in the show notes, you'll see a link, and this is where you can get information. Gold IRAs allow people to include physical gold in their retirement accounts, and it's something more and more people are looking into now. If you're curious about gold IRAs and how they work, there's a free guide linked below. Get the free guide, no obligations. Go to the link in the notes or scan the QR code to get the free guide to the gold IRAs. The other thing I want to talk to you about today is your food supply. We have been hearing more and more about the shortages that are happening, even with farms and farmers. We have a great product here on the Mary Grace Show. It is our grid down, chow down American freeze dried beef. This is what it looks like. This is 1 pound of freeze-dried beef. It's not jerky, it's beef that you can reconstitute with water. You put water in it, it acts just like regular ground beef. You can make whatever you would make with ground beef, and we're gonna run that ad here, and we're also going to run an ad for our friends over at officialsynapse.com. This is where you can get your health in order. Go and talk to them about getting to the root cause of illness. We will be right back after these ads, and we'll bring Sam right back to talk to you. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is my brother. And I'm Nace, and we're at the Grid Down Chowdown. And this is Larry, who is a local rancher that we've partnered with. Now, Larry, you've been ranching for over 4 generations, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm 3rd generation, my son's 4th generation, and I've got some grandkids that are 5th generation.
Man, that's awesome.
We've been here for quite a while, yeah.
All right, now, Larry, your cattle is grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised, just like God intended them to be.
Yes, because I want to know what's in that animal.
Right.
What it's been fed. And so the only way to do that is for us to keep it all natural, just like God has done it for years and years and years, thousands of years.
How has partnering up with us helped you and your ranch?
Well, it's allowed us to develop a market that we didn't have before, one that can get directly to the consumer, and that's great.
And just remember, more importantly, with every package that you buy, we put a salvation track in there. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for allowing us to do what we believe that God has us here to do. And just remember, God loves you. He really does.
Amen.
Go to griddownchowdown.com. Americans spend more now than ever on healthcare, and we're sicker than almost anybody in the world. We've put our trust in a system that's completely let us down. Dr. Troy Sproul and the team at Synapse Center for Health and Healing have changed all that. They are a functional medicine clinic, and they get to the root cause of what's made you sick in the first place. Once they do that, they give you solutions to help you get out of that. This is the way that medicine was meant to be practiced, and this is what they're doing. They're changing the entire system from the inside out, one person at a time, and you could be one of those people. And so when you're working with the team at Synapse, they're giving you solutions and not just prescriptions. That's a game changer for me. When you set up a free discovery call with Synapse, you're starting on a journey of healing. You're starting on a journey of getting answers. And that's why I've partnered with them, because I want you to be healthy. I want your family to be healthy. I want you to have all of the resources that you need to steward the body and the health that God's given you. Go to officialsynapse.com and tell them Mary Grace sent you. That's Official Synapse, SYNAPSE. Okay, and you can see that QR code right there on the screen, officialsynapse.com. That's who I trust for my healthcare. And I don't have myself in the system that just wants to medicate. And I'm finding tremendous value with this. So we have back with us Sam the Spy here today, Sam Faddis, and this has been such an enlightening conversation. I want to remind people, if you're coming back for the replay, please leave a comment. It always helps to boost us up in the algorithm, and let us know your thoughts about what Sam has been talking about. You're getting you're getting insights from a true insider. And I think that's what people find so valuable about these conversations with you, Sam, because you're not just speculating. You're talking about what's really happening deep down in these organizations that you've been a part of and that you're still very familiar with for such a long time. And we appreciate you taking the time to be here and to share these insights with our audience, and I know they do as well. So speaking of which, you have been in the system, having worked in the state of Washington as an assistant district attorney. You've also been a prosecutor, you've been a JAG officer, and so you know how the legal system works. We have a situation with judges, federal judges, who are issuing these rulings that are cutting or are intended to cut off President Trump's ability to exercise his executive powers. What is going on here? And how is this going to be stopped?
Right. So, at the federal level, we obviously have a court system that there are state courts and all this, but right now we're talking about federal courts, U.S. government courts, and the country is broken up into districts. So there's obviously appellate courts and so forth. But if you will, the trial court level, the bottom level of the federal judiciary are these district courts. And they have districts. In other words, they literally have a geographical area they cover. So to use Washington State, because it's a simple example, and I practice there, you have two districts in the state of Washington. You got an Eastern District and a Western District. And it runs roughly somewhere along the line of the mountains. So you've got the Western District, Seattle and all the populated areas along the coast, and then the Eastern District covers probably 3/4 of the state land-wise. Anyway, whatever. So you got a district court judge, and he's sitting out there, probably, I think it's in Spokane, the biggest city in Eastern Washington, and he hears cases that involve, his jurisdiction extends to cases that have a locus, have a connection, in layman's terms, to that district. What does that
Right.
mean? That means if I'm trying to sue you and I live in Mississippi and you live in Mississippi and I'm suing you over something that happened in Mississippi, I can't file my case in the Eastern District of Washington. The Eastern District of Washington is for cases concerning it. Now, maybe if your business is there and I don't live there, but you harmed me, maybe I can file the suit. But the bottom line is, the judge hears cases that have this connection. He has to have jurisdiction over this case. Now, why am I harping on that? Because that's crucial to the whole concept. The judge can issue judgments of a couple of different types. Again, speaking very broadly in layman's terms. One is he can issue damages. You hit me with you did some kind of physical damage to me or my business. He gives me a judgment for $1 million, $2 million, whatever the heck it is. He can also give what's called equitable relief, which is to order something be done or not be done. And the most common version of this is an injunction, which means you sue and say, JoJo's going to build a road across a piece of property that he doesn't own or for whatever, and I want an order from the court that he can't do it. Okay, that's distinct from just pay something. It's
And
an
that's
actual
so you're enjoining them to stop.
enjoining
Okay.
precisely. So now there are various variations on that, yada yada. We don't need to get lost in that. The point is he can issue this injunction, but again, the baseline is his jurisdiction. His authority extends within the boundaries of the district that he is the judge for. Okay, so what have we, somehow or another, we have now moved to a system in which district court judges presume that they have the authority to issue injunctions, orders to the entire federal government, to the president of the United States, thou shalt not do X,
Right.
Y, and Z, like these people. And despite the fact that I'm the judge in Spokane that covers Eastern Washington, somehow or another, I have assumed unto myself the authority to issue this order to you, the president, or to the secretary of state, whoever. And that order will have effect everywhere within the United States of America. So now we have what are called nationwide injunctions, where every little tin pot U.S. district court judge scattered around the country, keep in mind they're appointed for life, presumes that he can issue an order and say, you can't deport those guys, you can't do this, you can't fire people. It is, in my mind, a blatantly unconstitutional assumption of authority. And as a logical matter, in law, you always look for the principle. Okay, you made this ruling, so what's the principle? Because then it can be applied elsewhere. If this district court judge in the Eastern District of Washington, to stick with my analogy, has the authority to issue that order, well, why can't he issue an order telling the president he can't deploy an aircraft carrier, or he can't use nuclear weapons, or he can't do what if he somehow has unquestioned authority over the entire U.S. government to simply rule as a single individual, I think logically, if you think about it for a second, you just lost the republic. This is an unelected guy who all of a sudden gets to rule. Plus, not to mention you have chaos, because there are a whole bunch of these guys scattered all over the country, and there's nothing that says they can't issue completely contradictory orders. The guy in Mississippi and the guy in Washington State and the guy in New York don't agree, and they all simultaneously issue a different nationwide injunction. How the heck? It's madness. So where am I
Yeah,
going with this?
it's
I think
crazy.
it's not a question of something. I mean, it is being fought on an individual basis, but I think the issue is bigger. And honestly, what we need, either via a Supreme Court ruling or via an act of Congress, is we need to eliminate this entire idea of a nationwide injunction. A power that these judges have just seized for themselves, we need to clearly take it away. We're not running a system where every guy who loves Barack Obama in any district court in the country, he hates Trump, and so he can just sit there from behind his bench and issue orders and presume to command the entire United States government. So that's what's happening, and that's what's at stake, and I think it has to be killed at the root. And there is some move in Congress to do that, but of course the Democrats will fight it.
This is thank you for explaining that. It's such a good explanation, and I've seen Stephen Miller talking about this, trying to educate some of the smooth-brained teleprompter readers known as anchors on CNN, and it kind of goes, but but the idea of the constitutionality of this and is so critical, but also it's not new. It actually,
No.
it happened to Thomas Jefferson. He was facing a similar situation. And in his case, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think in his case, he actually eradicated some of these courts. And
That's entirely, yes, the courts can be eliminated. That's not code for killing them, people. So just so when you're putting together your sound bites, they can be defunded and the position can be removed, and there is no more judicial office. Yes, that can happen. Also, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to force it to this point because we don't want to have this kind of confusion. But I would argue that if you're president of the United States and a judge issues what your legal advisors tell you is an unconstitutional order, there's always the option for you just saying, thank you for your opinion, little tin pot District Court judge of the Eastern District of Washington. By the way, to my knowledge, the Eastern District of Washington is not involved in any of his cases. I just grabbed a hold of it. Okay, just to be clear. But there's always the possibility of the president just saying, you have absolutely no authority to issue this injunction, and I have no intention of listening to you. You can continue to talk to yourself out in Spokane, but we're going to continue to march. Now, nobody wants that solution because now we have a true constitutional crisis and we have chaos. And I'm not saying that would be the preferred solution. But just because little district court judge in Washington State said something doesn't require the president and his legal advisors to agree. They do have the option of saying, thank you for your opinion. We're putting the dudes on the plane. We're flying them out of here. Have a nice day.
And that's in some ways what he's done. I mean, the plane was midair on one of these injunctions, and there was no possibility that President Trump was going to order that plane to turn back. And but I think what do you think his strategy is, President Trump's strategy is, when he comments and tweets about the fact that the process that they're using? For example, this one judge who has been miraculously given 4 cases, which is statistically impossible. Out of all of the judges in Washington, D.C., this judge just miraculously happens to wind up with the winning number 4 times. I mean, that he should buy a lottery ticket, because he's got good luck. Um,
Well, I'll give you my guess because I don't have some magic
yeah.
insight. I think he is, as he typically does, he is superb at kind of manipulating the surrounding
Mhm.
atmosphere and creating a context. And I think what he is creating ultimately for the Supreme Court is the atmosphere in which they will ultimately take one of these cases to the Supreme Court and present them with egregious judicial oversteps, and plus the looming threat of a true constitutional
Mhm.
crisis, which nobody wants, and sort
Right.
of prep the ground for the Supreme Court stepping in. And if they don't eliminate nationwide injunctions entirely, severely limiting them, I would expect, for instance, the Supreme Court could begin easily by saying, if you're issuing a nationwide injunction regarding the authority of the President of the United States as Commander in Chief, you have
Don't
no such
bother.
authority. Like, let's just draw a
Yeah.
line right there. You can't, because what? Because we can't be in a war and have you, district court judge, telling me where I can move an armored division or whether I can fly planes or whether I can resupply troops. That's existential. We can't survive as a country in
Mhm.
such a system. So even, and that's one example, but so even if ultimately the Supreme Court doesn't say these things are unconstitutional per se, they would dramatically limit them in a whole
Mhm.
variety of ways.
Okay.
Anything starting with Commander in Chief, and that would apply to things related to the border, terrorist groups, that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. Get out of this business. You can't tell the president whether he can or cannot put a bunch of terrorists on a plane and fly them out of here.
Right.
That
Yeah, I agree, and it's very clear from the language that the president has used with regard to these gang members that they are he's classified them as foreign national invaders, terrorists, and
without
so
question.
I don't see the how there could be any doubt about what you're saying with regard to the jurisdiction or the authority that any district court judge would have over the executive actions. It's remarkable to me that this is even being debated, but the people the
I
people
agree.
behind it clearly want control of this country at any cost. And that includes throwing the Constitution completely out the window. You know, they
Look, in my mind, the district court judge who issued the ruling that you referenced, where he was literally telling them you need to turn an
yeah.
aircraft around in mid-flight, I'm tempted to say he lost his mind, but I think you would have to be dealing with an individual who essentially on an individual basis believes Donald Trump is an illegitimate ruler and is so blinded by his political opposition to Trump that he just essentially is prepared to regard everything he's
Mhm.
doing as illegitimate. And look, the judge can go home and throw darts at a picture of Donald Trump for all I care. He's an American citizen. He's allowed to have his opinion. What he can't do is sit behind a bench and base his rulings on that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
He can't do that. And then once you tolerate a system like that, well, we're all done, man. I mean, then the judges, I mean, if you think about it, judges are the least democratic officials in our system, particularly federal judges. Nobody elects them, they're appointed. They sit there for life and they make decisions. And there isn't a vote, there's one guy.
Yeah.
That's like a monarchy. That's an autocracy. So you better keep tight control on it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They can basically, if you're not careful, you're going to give them the authority to do whatever they want on
Mhm.
any issue.
Mhm. Yeah, this entire the past several years have really opened my eyes, and I believe many people's eyes to the deeply flawed judiciary system that we have. It's been shocking to see how much power these judges wield, and the prosecutors, and even with the plea deal system. So many of our J6ers were railroaded into taking pleas on a what I would consider a fraudulent basis, with absolutely no basis in reality. And that's tyranny. So, believe it or not, Sam, this conversation, as always, has flown by. We have been talking
Okay.
here for almost an hour, and hard to believe. I just, wow. To our listeners, thank you for your thoughtful comments. Thank you to everybody who's been here today. We appreciate everything that you are saying. And as always, please leave a comment for us when you come back. Let us know your thoughts on these issues. Also, share, thumbs up, subscribe. Hit the like button. If you're on Rumble, do a repost on Rumble. There's all kinds of ways you can help other people see these shows. Share to your wall, retweet, do all of that. Get the word out that this content is here, because it is so valuable. And hopefully, if you do have somebody who's maybe not completely insane leftist, that maybe has an ear to hear, I think this would be a good show to send them, to explain to them what's going on and really what's at stake for our nation if these types of behaviors are allowed to continue. It's not just for this year or next year or the Trump administration. This type of behavior unchecked could lead to the complete downfall and degradation of America as we know it. And that's the key here. Sam Faddis, where can people find you? How can they follow you and support your work?
Yeah, look, the best place to go as a single point of contact would be to our online magazine, And Magazine. And I say ours because my wife, Gina, who, as you know, is also a retired CIA officer, and I produce it together. andmagazine.substack.com, andmagazine.substack.com. And then from there, that will take you to Truth Social and X, and it will take you to Facebook, where I am unfortunately still compelled to be present, and Getter, and all kinds of other places. I mean, I say unfortunately because I don't like their policies on censorship, but a lot of folks in the Patriot movement still use Facebook, and therefore sort of compels us to put information out there to reach the audience.
I'm right there with you. And, by the way, Zuckerberg is still fact checking. He put out a video promising that he was going to do away with this. And I have 2 pieces up right now that have been fact checked erroneously.
Well, I think I've said this to you before. My favorite fact check of Facebook was back a number of years ago, the initial stages of COVID. And I posted something about the likelihood that the virus had come out of the Wuhan lab in the back. It was fact checked by Facebook about biological warfare and other details. And I was thinking, somewhere there's like some 21-year-old kid in a cubicle writing this. And I really desperately want to send him my resume, which includes things like Iran CIA's terrorist weapons of mass destruction unit worldwide, and chased every chem, bio, nuke, and radiological program in the world. So at the risk of sounding like a really arrogant old guy, I think I might know a little bit more about the Wuhan lab and bio warfare than you, buddy. But of course, that would be an exercise in futility. So
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's the quality of their fact checking for everybody. Is like,
yeah. Well, they actually fact checked something that I put up. They fact checked a fact that wasn't even there. Like they made up a fact and then said it was false. Like,
well, that at least is clever. That's
I mean, it's like this is they literally like pulled something out of thin air and then fact checked it, and I'm like, that's not even on this document.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
LinkedIn, of course, banned me for the same reason. And then they told me in classic Chinese Communist Party fashion, that in order to apply to come back, I had to write out essentially what amounted to a written confession
Mhm.
of the error of my ways and submit it to them. And I'm like, cool. There's
Yeah. Bye.
a cold day in hell comes to
Yeah.
mind. Is what?
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Yeah, exactly. YouTube does that too, that you have to go through re-education camp to get back
Yes, that's
to get
exactly what it was.
out of
Re-education camp.
yeah,
Yes.
out of YouTube timeout. So, you know, we just we do the best we can. I'm actually almost at 100,000 subs on Facebook. By the way, we're gonna have a kind of a big celebration when we get there. If you're not already following me on Facebook, please make sure that you are actually following the page and that you've liked the page. Some
Right.
of you see it and you comment and you're there all the time, but you may not actually be a follower. So please double check and see that you are. We are imminently at 100,000. And that's because of the people, the diehard people on Facebook that continue to share and
Yeah.
promote and support what we do here at the Mary Grace Show. So we really do appreciate it because there are people on Facebook who are really vital to this movement, and we appreciate you. We appreciate you putting up with all the jackassery on a day in and day out basis and, you know, being shunned by your friends and family for putting out the truth. It's part of your patriotic duty
Yes.
and it doesn't go unrecognized. Okay, that being said, we will be back this afternoon with another great guest with our friend Sean Baker, the carnivore doctor. We're going to be here at 5 p.m. Eastern with the Make America, Healing, blah, 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 Healing America and Beyond podcast series. And this is focusing on MAHA and helping people to understand what is going on in the current climate with that. So please join us live right here on the Mary Grace Show. We will see you soon. And thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thanks again, Sam Faddis, Sam the Spy. It's been another great session of Spy Talk.